Hello, everyone. We are live, and sorry for my hair is turning like full Kurt Cobain soon. Yeah, in New York.
Gray shirt.
Gray shirts are back.
Day ending in Y.
Right. back to Russ, who's got something to say.
Yeah, so let's talk about the NBA bubble, or what we thought was a bubble. Yeah. And I'm not going to talk about the snitch line. I don't care about that because it's really a whistleblower line. Some players are calling it a snitch line. It's not true. But what I didn't realize is, until someone called into local Philly radio this morning, is if you are like a Disney Club member, you can now go and get a reservation at Disney, at the Grand Floridian, where the NBA bubble guys are, and basically hope to see them walking around. And to me, it's like,
is there anything? I mean, first of all, let's just talk about Disney being open, and in general, like a place that brings people from. No one from Florida goes to Disney.
I know.
So it's a place that brings people from out of state to Disney to infect each other and then leave to go back to the rest.
I know.
There's literally no more scary place that could be open than Disney.
Yeah, but they won't be from New York.
Right. They won't be from New York. But the idea is, the only thing I could say about that, Ek, is the other day I watched one of those press conferences from Florida, which is mind-numbing. But and this wasn't DeSantis. This was like a local mayor.
Yeah.
All he would say is, well, there are very smart people at Disney, and I think they have it figured out. And that's the worst thing you could say about this virus, is to say you think they have it figured out, because nobody has it figured out. But
hey, let's go see an NBA player and cough on them.
Right. I like that Epcot's not open because Americans are not even allowed to visit real fake Europe, like.
but I'm really shocked that Disney doesn't at least.
That's a Stephen Colbert joke, Mike.
That's why
I'm shocked that Disney doesn't even at least have some of the hotel cordoned off for the NBA. I'm sure they weren't going to be able to sell out all the rooms. I get that. But just the fact that this guy said that his family's going to go down there, and besides going to the park, that they hope to see the NBA players in the hotel, like, that's bad to me. And then, of course, now we're also, and this is all bubbles, there should have been a rule, and I know this sounds harsh, but that if you leave the bubble, that's it. You cannot come back.
Yeah, that has to be the way it is.
And in the NHL and now in the NBA, there are players that either are leaving or planning on leaving the bubble and then planning on coming back. And to me, that is a recipe for disaster.
Well, I can't remember the player whose wife is pregnant and they're going to leave the bubble. Lars Eller. If they leave the bubble, they have to have at least 2 negative tests over a span of 4 days. They will be basically quarantined in the bubble for 4 days. And then once they have negative tests and they're sure that he's not infected, then he would be able to rejoin the team. So there is a re-entry program.
But here's the problem with the re-entry program. You don't know if those negatives are good. There's going to be a percentage of bad tests for all these tests, and that's not enough tests for me to allow a guy back in. I'm sure Ek will probably feel the same way.
Well, we did hear about the report earlier in the week from our Pambasu regarding the Canadians. I think they said it was a report of like 6
of them were false positives.
Yeah, right. They were all false positives. Right. So,
and then you also have, you talked about the bubble, right? I think it was Rashard Holmes from Sacramento, right? He went out to get food, left the bubble. Now he's got to be quarantined after there was a whole bunch of tweets telling people don't leave to go get your food. Here's how to get your food delivery. So the question is,
I interviewed him. He's a former Sixer. I interviewed him when he was a rookie. Not the brightest bulb. That's all I'll say.
Is it delivery or DiGiorno?
But these weird things are going to happen, and I don't think you could. I don't know how else you get a clearer picture or send a clearer message to players that one false thing could ruin the whole league. Yeah. Like just one movement, you don't say something about one of those things that could ruin a whole league's comeback and affect your career in essence.
Now, Russ and I talked about this yesterday because the story broke yesterday regarding the naming of the Buffalo Bills Stadium in suburban Buffalo. It was named New Era Field, but after New Era, which is the cap company, closed their plant in suburban Buffalo last year, took PPP money this year, and then laid off 120 people. The county executive in Erie County came out and said he wouldn't refer to the field as New Era Field any longer, and there was a mutual parting of the ways between the two sides. And now, and I also found out, Russ, so there was a financial aspect to it.
I figured there was.
Yeah, they were late. They were late on their payments. They were late on their installments to the bills. So now they're going to rename. Now they're seeking out new names. I know you came up with one company.
I came up with one, but of course there was a company that emailed me that is trying to, they want to name it Tushy, and it's for a bidet company. But moving on from that,
they're going to call it the Toilet Bowl.
I said, why not have Tang sponsor it, and then you could call it the Juice Bowl or just the Juice, and that would again.
And O.J. Simpson's name is still on the stadium, so there you go.
And that
Ring of Honor, I would assume, right?
And that would be good for one of their former players, who, as we all know.
I said if the Anchor Bar,
that sounds like a great idea. Right?
If the Anchor Bar sponsored it, they could call it the Morgue, or if a local fast food place called Mighty Taco got the sponsorship, they could call it the Burrito Bowl. Or
Mike has way too much time on his hands, is what we're
good. Keep going, Mike. Keep going.
No, I'll stop there because I don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah, you're already there.
Too late.
You got to go all in now. You got to lean in. All right, here we go.
One other thing, because this was mentioned yesterday, and this will roll in 2 days ago in Pennsylvania, the governor had said, "Hey, no big outdoor activities, blah blah blah." And on the radio, they were saying that means sporting events too, even though it wasn't spelled out. In the release. Now he has since backtracked and said Wolf said he'll let science be the guide as to whether there'll be fans or not. But I think I find that it's interesting, but Eck, we have to be real here.
Oh, I know.
Only did it because of public backlash.
Oh, and I like him. I just said the other day how much I thought he's done a good job, and this is this, and he has for the most part done a really good job. But this is like, we live in such a weird world. I mean,
people believe because there are people that believe they'll actually be able to show up to games and like for the Eagles as an example.
Didn't it come out like nothing until February at first?
Right, he said nothing till February, but now today he said no. It'll depend on science if we could have any fans at all.
It wasn't nothing till February. Very specifically target the NFL. I mean, that's like, can you target the NFL any more specifically than that?
I know, but again, they don't want to come out and say it. And I also think what comes into play is yesterday was the opt-out day for Eagles season ticket holders as to saying whether they would let their money ride or they wanted it back because they weren't going to show up this year. So there's that kind of stuff is in flux too. And so I think that decision by Wolf had to play into that because
there is no sport that needs the fans in the stadiums less than the NFL. That's obvious. Monetarily, I mean, they get away with like 8 games a year, and it's almost like, if they can do 8 games a year, think about it. I mean, they're not making that much money off this. So, I mean, they make so much money in other ways.
They're making a decent chunk of money.
I'm not
money, but the NFL's plan right now.
It's got to be
not really a plan because you're getting a lot of pushback from people that say there doesn't seem to be any details. I mean, you look at what Major League Baseball came out with, at least you look at what the NHL's come out with in the NBA. That type of plan we haven't seen necessarily yet from the NFL in terms of how they're going to handle training camp, the season, segregating players, all of that, especially with contact. I mean, there's some things that are happening, but the propensity of things that have to happen doesn't look like that information has been forthcoming.
No, and actually, and that's something 2 months ago I was saying to Mike, they're doing nothing, and Mike is like, because they don't have to, and they let time slip away, and now it got to the point where, like, the Kansas City Chiefs rookies were supposed to report to the stadium this weekend, and it's not going to happen. There's no way in the world that sport will start on time because they can't make up the time that they lost to get a plan in place, and now the PA is not even meeting with the league right now because there is no plan to protect their players. Other than I just heard today that the NFL has to, what was it? There was something about their practice facilities that they basically have to do keep it at a certain level. I'm not even sure what that means, but I'll tell you the other thing too about the bubble. One last thing about the NBA bubble. This person said, and I think they're probably right, the only thing that the Grand Floridian is testing on people coming in is their temperature.
Your temperature, right.
That is not an indicator of anything.
You know, what's funny and what's kind of ironic at the end of the day is sports may teach us how many people have this without any symptoms. Like that. Right. I think that that's actually going to be like it's like an interesting case study because we're finding out so many players are being, players, but then they're like, all of them are like, I don't feel any, I feel a little bit lousy, but I always feel it's interesting how you can get this without symptoms. And I think we're learning. I think that there's a study. I mean, somebody should be doing a study on the amount of, they're testing thousands of players through all the leagues. A couple thousand, maybe 1,000 players, 2,000 players with all the leagues. Yeah. that's a little bit of a case study on like how many people can have it without thinking they have it.
That's interesting, actually. I think somebody should do that.
Yeah, I think so too, because it makes a ton of sense because you're really seeing it, and it's fascinating to me.
I guess my question is, what do you want in the test? They could do the rapid test, right? But that, as we've seen, that's not necessarily an indicator of a positive or negative because there's been a lot of false positives, right? So you could have those who are
false negatives,
asymptomatic but have it and not show up, and vice versa, right? So what are you gaining besides some level of comfort? You're not really providing any accurate information if you're going to do that.
I think you could do it on the basis of the antibody information. I think that's where, because right now everybody thought if they got the antibodies, that's it, they're good forever, and it turns out it may only be for 3 months.
Right, or what? Yeah, I think
you can only do that. But the question is what's the turnaround time associated with getting the results of that test?
The antibody test, I think, is actually quicker than the actual
regular test, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but how quick is it, right? If you're talking about testing people at the hotel, what is the turnaround time associated with getting results of that test?
Yeah, because my daughter got tested for this. It took like 3 to 5 days to get.
Right. Yeah, for me, it took 24 hours, but that was for surgical.
There's different kinds of tests, obviously.
Yeah, right. So if you're having that, even 2 days, right? Are you quarantining everybody who comes to the hotel then for the first 2 days that they're showing up to the hotel until you get the results of that test? Not saying you shouldn't. But that is a major impact from a financial and also impacting people's vacations, and they may be reluctant to necessarily go through that.
Yeah, let's talk hockey. I agree with Jake. Okay. All right, here we go. Jake and we obviously this is related to hockey and sports, so we have to get into it as well. But here we go. Let's start the show up here. Today is Thursday, July 16th. Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, July 16th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello, and yesterday I was probably very thankful that I didn't have a blue check mark on Twitter.
Yeah, what happened with that? I think we'll talk about that later. Go ahead. Continue.
I'm Jan Levine.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund, and I saw the blue check mark thing, but I don't know what it's about.
Everybody who had a blue check mark couldn't tweet.
Well, because there's a bunch of famous people who got hacked, and the scam was to give me X amount of Bitcoin and you'll get double that. I think it was like 500, get 1,000, 1,000, or 2,000. And then I guess as a way to prevent it from going viral, I'm not sure if Twitter, but anybody who had a blue check was basically off the grid for about 3 to 4 hours.
Got it. And I'm Eklund, and I don't have a blue check out of spite because originally I tried to get a blue check mark and they wouldn't give me one because I was using a pseudonym. They weren't giving out check marks to pseudonyms. Then when they did, they came back to me and I'm like, no, screw you. So I don't have a blue check mark out of spite. I was like,
but Dart Guy's got one.
I could have one, Mike. I had.
Of course, Dart Guy has one.
I could have had one. But anyway, we're watching HockeyBuzzcast from HockeyBuzz.com. I'm just that, I'm very spiteful that way.
And it's nothing against Dart Guy, but it's like, okay, if, I'm just saying, if he's got one and he's called Dart Guy, then somebody named Eklund, who's got 200,000 followers, shouldn't have.
Should have. Well, and I could have, but I had 200,000 when they turned me down earlier. So there you have it. All right, here we go. I want to start off today, even though we're not talking about the virus, but there is interesting stuff that's coming out of Boston. And this is I wrote about this in my blog. And that is that, Pasternak and what's his name?
David Kase.
David Kase, sorry.
Andre
Kase.
Andre Kase.
Have
been deemed
there's two brothers,
Yeah. Have been deemed unfit to practice. Or unable to is unfit to practice, right? Unfit to practice today. And of course, these two, the speculation is, the source of this is that they've tested positive right now. And the NHLPA has part of the deal they worked out with the NHL is that we wouldn't be saying every time someone tested positive, right? It wouldn't be like reporting it. It would be private. However, looking at this is just wildly speculating now that, that this is we're going to see wild speculation every time this happens, right? This is what is going to be. Are we just in for that? I guess we just have to accept that this is what's going to be the case every time someone can't play.
Yep.
Yes.
For whatever reason.
Especially right now when all that's going on in training camp is scrimmages and playing power play and playing penalty,
right.
Like drills like that. When two players, I mean, I understand what the NHL did. They said, okay, everything's funneling through us, even if it's a concussion, even if it's a hangnail, we're going to control the message, and we're not going to give any specificity when it comes to what the person or what the player has. They're just going to say they're unfit to play. But when two players from the same team, from the same country,
who were working out together during the whole layoff.
Bingo.
Are you saying the fact pattern leads us to a certain conclusion?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay,
but
just making sure that I'm following the bouncing ball here.
We were on the conference call.
We were able to do that. The government not so much, but we can do that.
Well, the NHL is. We talk about this, right? The NHL doing this, in my opinion, just admit it, right? There's a benefit for people knowing. There's a benefit for
there's a benefit
the players.
You're right. Yeah, and I thought
reporters, you have other people showing up or even being segregated. There's no reason to hide this. It's not as if it's this kind of disease that nobody's got and nobody needs to know how contagious.
What about the people at the rink that they were working out at? What about the people that other people?
No, they talked about contract tracing. They're just not going to tell you about it.
Right.
Well, all right. So they're gonna they're gonna do the contact tracing.
They're gonna do it. They said it on the call. They will do it.
And I get it. I mean, I get that this is private, but at the same time, the reality is you have to look at this like they're public figures, and and it's just going to wildly speculate. I mean, either they're unfit to play because they have the virus, or they're unfit to play because they are out of shape.
I'll tell you what's going to happen.
It's one or the other.
Well, I'll tell you what could happen. What could happen is with one of these star players, and they say he's unfit to play, whatever, and they do contact tracing, and just some average Joe may end up tweeting about it or putting it on Instagram and outing a player at some point, not intentionally, but just because they don't know the rules. That could happen, and they can't stop somebody else from doing that unintentionally, and it wouldn't shock me if that happens.
Now, it could simply be that they had it and they're recovering, but they're not recovered enough to actually practice at full speed,
right?
Or they just tested positive. So that's the thing.
Or they haven't gotten the test results back either, right? That's the thing that's been happening a lot in baseball, where there was delay because they hadn't gotten the results back, right? But again, you can then say that they are going through the testing protocol and we do not have the results, and therefore, out of a burden of being cautious, they are not on the ice.
You could say that.
Now, Jan, did you find out anything more on Rask, or was it just
just supposing he left practice? He wasn't on the ice after a certain period of time this morning, but nothing else has come out in terms of why.
Now, you mentioned players that could be out of shape, and there's some interesting chatter I've heard from a couple places regarding Johnny Gaudreau in Calgary. That he's been skating separate from the main group. And there has been some chatter, and I don't know whether it's truthful or not, but there's been some chatter that he came to camp woefully out of shape.
Yeah, even on his 31 Thought podcast, I guess you saw this too.
Yes.
That there's something sketchy going on with the Flames that they haven't revealed, likely a COVID-related reason. They split up.
Well, maybe, but that Elliot Friedman did say it's possible that he's out of shape, so they don't know.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows for sure, for certain. And that's what we're going to have to deal with over these playoffs. Is that it's going to be a lot of sort of smoke and mirrors and a lot of sort of we just don't know and we're not going to know. But I mean, if it is him being out of shape, that sort of feeds into the narrative of what you've been talking about him. Like wanting out of Calgary, if he decided he didn't, just didn't want to show up, didn't want to do what he needed to do to perform at his best, then that's one way of showing your discontent. But he's been a good pro, so I would think that he wouldn't do that, but who knows?
Yeah, Cassidy, by the way, came out and said that he thinks that Rask had a little bit of bad luck, and people were saying he doesn't seem overly concerned. So that does seem like some sort of injury, like from not playing enough.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be
that's going to happen with goalies a lot.
Yeah, no, injuries, goalies especially. Yeah, I mean, unless you've been keeping your really good stretching regimen going, that's if every time I play goal I pull every groin I have, because you have to stay in shape.
You have two of them.
Yeah, raise your groin if it's not pulled, right? So Yeah, I think that the way this plays out here is going to be fascinating to see. And I mean, obviously, we're within now. We're getting close to the 2-week period of this. We are actually in the 2-week period of this thing starting, right? So, I mean, 2 weeks from today will be the game.
Right, but if you look at you think about, we talked about this early on, right? So with Boston, right? They really don't play quote unquote a meaningful game,
right?
For at least another week beyond that 2-week period, unless you view that the round robin is material. So if guys are not necessarily fully ready within that time frame, it's not a major impediment because they still have at least a little bit of time to get caught up until they have to worry about the playoffs starting.
Right, man. Anthony, we're talking about Pasternak and the and right now, and how this is going to be a little bit of it's just going to lead to wild speculation all the time. Like, oh, this is the world we're in. Like, it's going to be wildly speculated that he has it or is getting tested for it, and we won't know. And I mean, it's okay that we don't. I mean, we don't necessarily have to know. But I think the reality, I mean, it doesn't, the reality.
You're acting like you do.
No, we don't. We don't. I mean, if they're doing contact tracing, cool. I'm good with that. But
they are.
But I think that, the media is going to want to know. So we're going to end up with this crate and people are going to want to know. So we're going to end up with
not even the media, right? We talked about this once gambling got legalized, right?
Right.
It's the
Gambling,
flow of information, which drives in terms of the gambling, right? And they need to have quote unquote accurate information to make decisions. And you're not going to have that now based upon the policy that the NHL has enacted.
Right. So moving on, though. So Reuters today released.
Let's just say one thing here. I just looked up the schedule. The three games that Boston plays, the last of the round robin is August the 8th. So right now you're talking 23 over 3 weeks.
Okay,
so
quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah, not having him for the 3 round robin games would be.
But that's 14 days. He's probably not practicing. There's different things. I mean,
no, you can't practice if
that's really going to be. That definitely could affect him.
So it does set you back a little bit training wise. It does.
I mean, I'm trying to remember how Pasternak looked when he came in from after his holdout and everything like that. But he was playing, right? He was playing at that time when he was held out, so he was playing.
Well, he didn't look that bad because
he didn't look that bad, right? So
yeah.
Reuters says there's going to be no 2021 Tokyo games. Likely means that there's going to be no 2022 Beijing games either. That's according to my favorite name, the IOC's Dick Pound, and he says that's what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, he's on the inside there.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with that. I don't see how it's going to clear up quick enough.
Wait, did they? You said that 2021 that Tokyo is off.
No 2021 Tokyo games. That's what. Well, this is IOC's Dick Pound says that if there are no, basically not off yet, but if there's no 2021 Tokyo games,
right, that
likely means no 22 for Beijing.
I unless they decide to move it someplace else, and I would think the Olympic, with 2 years or less than 2 years, they could move it to someplace that has held the Olympics before, like Vancouver, Salt Lake.
What are you going to do? Put it in one of those abandoned Olympic villages that they have?
I don't know. Well,
like Boston?
The funny thing is,
not Sarajevo.
The funny thing about China is we know everything will be accurate with the health reporting from China.
They can use the Saddle Dome.
Right. About the accuracy of Beijing's health reporting will be really easy to make the decisions on this for sure.
But the funny thing is, as part of the CBA, we're saying, we're going back to the Olympics pending the agreement with the IOC and the IIHF. Well, okay, 2022 is in Beijing. 2026 is in Milan. So we're still not talking about a North American games. So the Olympics in Torino were not a big success in terms of ratings or in terms of moving the ball at all. So again, I don't know if this is going to happen. It was part of the CBA, but it was pending those agreements. And if the IIHF and the IOC don't get on the same page as the NHL, then they use that as a carrot in the CBA negotiations, and then there's no carrot.
Don't we think here, that they should just move this to Vancouver in 2022? I don't
think they're going to move it. That's the problem.
You talk about and I was talking to some people out in Vancouver, all the things that were built, all that stuff, it's still used. It's still being
condos.
But that part I'm saying, but the luge and things like that.
I think they could still go to Lillehammer. I think it's still there.
Yeah, but it's not. It's been a long time ago.
Albertville. How about Albertville?
Vancouver stuff has really been well used, from what I've been told, and well maintained. And it's like you have everything pretty much in place. You can make a decision to go there pretty quickly.
They could use that building at Lake Placid, and
The problem is, Zach, the reason I don't think they'll move it is because I don't think if they move it, they're going to have a guarantee of being able to sell tickets. Yes. You have to be able to sell Olympic tickets like a year in advance.
So yeah,
I think they'd be able to sell. I mean, I was in Vancouver. Tickets was really hard.
Well, we may have a vaccine by then, right?
We should by 2022. Sure as hell hope we'd have something.
Even if we do, even if there is a vaccine by January, you're still talking about moving a place and selling billions of dollars worth of tickets and merchandise in a short amount of time, which for the Olympics, this is a short amount of time.
And it would be easier for them to do that in North America as opposed to doing Europe.
Definitely. I mean, you could definitely tell them quicker and move things quicker in North America. I mean, it was really Vancouver tickets were just incredibly expensive and hard to get, impossible to get. I mean, like I bought tickets for like things for my family off of guys on the street on Craigslist, so it was really pretty shaky.
Anthony, I wonder if we could get that Airbnb that we had in Vancouver for the
Look it now.
I don't think so.
All right, now I have a bone to pick with some people here.
Now that you open your mouth up.
I want to move on from what Dick Pound said to the Sportsnet 590s report. Of course, and it's out there everywhere now, but they were the first I heard about it, is that the 2019-2020 Lady Byng Memorial Trophy nominees are Ryan O'Reilly, Nathan McKinnon, and Austin Matthews. I am the biggest Austin Matthews fan in the world. People know that. I do not freaking understand how he's a Lady Byng candidate.
What? 8 penalty minutes.
He's got
8. That's all he's got. He's got 8 penalty minutes.
I know. He doesn't take penalties. I agree with you, but this is not. Listen, I know the penalty minutes are down, but like that. But to me, I personally
of the single digits.
Of the three nominees,
I don't see it.
Against top competition.
I mean, he checks, he hits, he does things.
Who cares? He didn't get penalties. Of the three nominees, he's got the lowest amount of penalty minutes. Now it's also other conduct in terms of how offensively gifted he is, and he was
gentlemanly play on the ice. Now off the ice we could have a discussion, but on
please. I've had at least a few people say, well, can you get the Lady Byng with a rap sheet, and says the charges were dismissed. So
I mean, I'll go so far as to say he was my number one, and it wasn't even close.
All right. Well, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, the Lady Byng is another one of those awards we all have our own opinions on how on what it actually means. I think
Chris Johnston from Sportsnet and Sarah Siv, who covers the Carolina Hurricanes, came up with a pretty good. I think that Jakob Slavin should have been on the list
instead of who?
Probably O'Reilly.
Yes.
Probably O'Reilly.
If not,
I know. I mean, again, O'Reilly is playing on a top line. Right. Well, yeah, top line against top competition.
Agreed.
Is Slavin on the top pairing?
Yes. He's on the top pairing. He's over 20 minutes a night. He scored 36 points, and as a shutdown top pairing defenseman, he had 10 penalty minutes.
All right, I'm going to throw something out there that's going to be very controversial about all three of these.
I think he's close. I wouldn't have put him on there.
But
out of the three,
the Lady Byng is a forwards award. The last defenseman to win the Lady Byng was Brian Campbell.
Right.
And that was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, we can talk about how we define this award, but I'm trying to tell you that we are looking at three players here who are all big guys, right?
Sure.
They're all strong players. They're all, when they're playing their best, they all have like a physical element to their game. So I'm going to sit there and tell you flat out that Austin Matthews' 8 penalty minutes is, to me, is me basically saying that all three of these guys aren't playing their game if they're Lady Byng candidates. That's how I feel about three of them. I
don't think the awards defined that way though. Actually.
No, it's not. But no, it's not. You're right. So let's give them the Lady Byng. Congratulations. You're deserving of the Lady Byng.
This has to do with being disciplined. This means no dumb penalties.
Russ, because
it is.
You're hitting people. You're going to just take penalties at times.
Here's the definition of the award.
There it goes.
To the player adjudged to have exhibited the best type of sportsmanship and gentlemanly conduct combined with a high standard of playing ability. And what this award is, and it's traditionally been, it's been basically the consolation prize for not getting the Hart Trophy. A guy like Barkov.
That's ridiculous. It can't.
That's what it is. I'm saying this talking reality here.
I know reality, but let's get back. This award, then let's just get rid of the friggin' award. Then
listen, I'm fine with that.
Award as the second best player in the league or whatever.
I have interviewed so many players that don't like the award.
The award sucks. All right, and it sucks in all ways. I agree with you because it's like it really. We have like the Masterton Award, we have gentlemen, we have players for people who are good people, but like the reality of this is that these three players should be taking penalties once in a while because they should be playing aggressive hockey.
You can't go to Austin Matthews and say take more penalties because what he's going to do is
be aggressive. Austin Matthews, if you're not playing defense, in my opinion, if you're not taking penalties,
he's just very disciplined and good about not taking penalties.
He had 78 takeaways last year. That doesn't mean that
I think he's pretty good defensively, but my gosh, maybe he's
a wuss. It just means.
The idea of this is, we have the hope.
What do you want it to be like the Hanson brothers and trip everybody?
No, we're going to go back to like
I'm going down a slippery slope with this conversation. This is getting slipperier by the second.
He's starting to tape his hands before he goes out on the ice too.
No. You guys are missing it. I'm like, even like,
I don't know where to go.
Joe Thornton, should he win the Lady Byng? He hasn't hit people either.
He was a big player, but okay.
It's not that you don't hit people. Hitting people is part of the game. That doesn't mean you're not general.
Playing aggressive is part of the game, and playing aggressive will get you penalties. It's just a reality.
The game is aggressive.
One of the biggest players in the league at the time that he played was John Beliveau, and John Beliveau was the definition of a gentleman on the ice. If he should have won the Lady Byng every single year. So I don't find a problem. Okay, do I think it's a great award? No, I think players probably don't. Dale Hunter is never going to win the Lady Byng.
You want to give it to Dino Cicerelli? Like, who do you want to give it to?
Yeah, I think Luke Richardson.
Let's talk the other side of things for a second. Chris Pronger, okay?
What other side? There is no other side.
Chris Pronger, okay. I was talking about Chris Pronger, and I know the whole crazy thing about Chris Pronger, like. Screwing with everybody for the last 24 hours is another thing altogether. But let's just get into this. Chris Pronger for a second. Part of what I was one time I was in the locker room, okay, and there was a discussion going on between Chris Pronger and some of the Flyers players. And for years I've always said that Canadian players, when they don't play, Canadian captains, okay, this is a little bit of a diatribe, but just follow this. Canadian captains, when they're not playing well, will often not talk up because they feel like they can't say anything because they're not playing well. Have you guys seen that? I've seen this before, where they get too introverted and because they feel like I can't tell everybody else to play hard if I'm not playing well. Pronger took a penalty, got suspended with the Flyers at one point, and somebody in the room was saying something along the lines of like, "Well, you're not helping the team at all." And Pronger's like, I'm absolutely helping the team. And he's like, well, you got suspended. No, Pronger should have been the captain of the Flyers. Was the captain of the Flyers, but should have been the captain of the Flyers even more than they had him there. I've always felt. Pronger said, the fact that people skate through the neutral zone with their head up because I'm on the ice is why if I take a suspension every once in a while, it's okay. It's better for this team because that gets people that warns people that I'm out there. And what I'm saying is that level of intimidation should be following guys like Matthews, Ryan, and McKinnon, or Riley and McKinnon.
Except Matthews doesn't elbow anybody in the head just for that.
I'm not saying they should get suspended, but I'm saying if you know McKinnon's not gonna, McKinnon's not gonna hit you, it's a totally different game as a defense.
Let me just quickly
rewind the clock about 3 minutes and start all over again.
Let me just quickly read off.
People are agreeing with me in the chat room.
Well, then they're wrong too.
Let me just quickly.
The chat room's always right. You know that.
Let me just quickly read off the list of players here. Pavel Datsyuk won it 4 years in a row, 06 to 09. Marty St. Louis won it three of the next 4 years, 2010, 11, and 13.
Those small players. Okay.
Ryan Campbell in 2012, Ryan O'Reilly in 2014, Yuri Hudler, Anze Kopitar, Johnny Gaudreau, William Karlsson, and Alexander Barkov. Not exactly a rogues gallery. So so what? It's an award.
You know what? Kopitar hits people.
No, Kopitar is, and again, Mike, you're absolutely 100% right. This award has become about the runner-up for the Hart. I agree with that, but that's not what this award is. So, in my opinion, winning this award for any one of these three players is a testimony against how they're not playing the game.
We don't have many Craig Jannies playing in the league anymore. So it's like, you know what I'm saying?
You're viewing the winning as a black mark against the person who wins it, is what you're saying.
I would agree with you. Would say this is a useless about one of the most useless awards. I agree, but to say that it's a mark against the player, I think it's in my opinion, I think it's maybe it's probably a step too far for me. It just
harsh. All right, yes,
a little too.
Part of me is going a little bit over the top here, but I'm just.
Usually that's my job. You're taking my job here.
No, to make a point, but there is an element to this that does exist. Okay. And I'm going onto the extreme here for sure. Okay. And guys, you're talking about, I'm not a huge Ryan O'Reilly fan, but McKinnon and Matthews, two of my favorite players in the league. And McKinnon, the thing I like most about McKinnon was I bet he took more penalties during the World Cup of Hockey than he took this year in the NHL. And why did he do that? Because in the World Cup of Hockey, we saw McKinnon. I was like so friggin' impressed with how this guy can play physically. Like how McKinnon is actually, his game is more of a power forward than he's let on. Like he's very skilled and can make great passes and stuff like that, but he can also drive to the net and cause things to happen. Nathan McKinnon is way better than we've ever seen in the NHL. I still believe that. Like
he did that because he knew that taking penalties in the World Cup wouldn't affect his pursuit of Lady Byng.
All right, yeah, sure. The World Cup, he must win the Lady Byng. No one thinks about this.
He could just play fast and loose in the World Cup. That's all.
No. He was different. He was fighting people. He was physical. Has Matthews fought anybody yet?
No.
Does he have to?
No.
So you're saying he has to?
So we're going back to the old days where you have to prove yourself by dropping the gloves and fighting.
He's not Wendell Clark. He's not Wendell Clark.
No,
I know, but he needs to create. By playing physical and by being a little bit dirty, you create more space for yourself. And
Matthews had a hard time scoring. He hasn't had space to score.
Okay, this is the example that Eck is thinking about. Gilbert Perreault, who was one of my favorite players growing up, he only fought, I think, 2 or 3 times in his career. He fought Dan Maloney, who was a really tough guy. He fought Brian Watson. He beat the crap out of both of them. And then he didn't have to prove. But star players don't have to do that anymore.
Look, I'll give you a best example.
McDavid doesn't have to fight.
Here's the best example I can give you, because this hasn't happened to Matthews yet. If it does, I'm sure he would fight. When Andy Bathgate kept getting speared by Gordie Howe, he beat up Gordie Howe by punching him in the solar plexus and took out the air. And everybody's like aghast because Andy Bathgate actually knew how to box and took out Gordie Howe. But that's only after like 100 spears. And he wrote about it in the New York Times. If that happens to Matthews, then you'll see him fight.
I got a better example. Stan Mikita was one of the most dirtiest guys in the NHL, right? Mikita, and then his daughter saw him in the penalty box, asked him, Dad, why are you separated from all your players? He won a Lady Byng. Does that mean he wasn't any more effective because he became one of the guys who didn't take penalties? No, it's kind of a ridiculous argument, especially given the way the NHL is played these days.
He established his credibility as a tough player, and he didn't have to prove it anymore. But in this league, at this time, that doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be any longer. Everybody
has to fight. I'm not saying he has to fight, but I know, and I do believe. But
you are saying he has to fight because you did say that.
No, I'm saying
that or giving a two-handed chop to a guy. That's your other alternative. It's going Bobby Clark on Karloff.
I'm saying he's got to play a dirtier game to get himself a little more space, and he should be taking some penalties in playing that game.
I hate at this point now that the reference near to me is like 20 years, like almost 15 to 20 years ago.
Okay.
Versus the game, where the game is played now.
Austin Matthews, I think it was a couple years ago, got run heavily by Jacob Trouba when I think he's with Winnipeg. And what did you want to do? Trouba is a bigger, older, stronger player. You want him to drop his gloves and break his hand.
No, I don't.
Yeah, I'm going to send you a video where Austin Matthews says the F word to Brock Besser. Would that make you feel better?
Listen, guys, I'm not like. Listen, I'm really
disqualify him. Disqualify him.
No, I'm
2 minutes from conduct. I think that puts him in the double digits.
If I'm one of these guys in the playoffs now, you don't think they're going to hear it from the other players? Oh, Mr. Lady Byng, nice job, Mr. Lady Byng. And you don't think they're going to? You don't think that's going to come back?
No, that will not come up.
And when Matthews scores a game-winning goal, he can very easily chirp back.
Yeah, you're right. But I mean, Anyway,
you put the trophy, you put it on the counter, you peel back the foil and show the lovely dark chocolate that's on the so you don't have this, I do.
Is that Swiss chocolate, and he played in Switzerland, so there you go.
Listen, I'd really like to agree with you all, but then we'd all be wrong. So let's just move on.
What about the Masterton? We have to just
let's go to the Masterton. A very different trophy here. I don't expect these guys to fight or drop the gloves. I'm just saying these are Masterton trophies, a different award. And Stephen Johns, Dallas, Oscar Lindblom, Philly, and Bobby Ryan, Ottawa. This, of course, is the award for overcoming something usually. That's generally what it comes down to.
Right. Perseverance, they call it.
Perseverance. It usually has to do with overcoming at the end of the day is what it's turned into. And I think Lindblom is like a fantastic candidate for this if there ever was one. This feels like his award to lose. I might be wrong about that.
I would get the slippery slope of comparing stories, and this is where the trophy is in many ways becomes problematic in debating it.
Yeah. That's true.
My argument would be Lindblom would be more of a candidate. Not that he's not one now, but next year when he returns to game action, to me that's more of where he would deserve it. I kind of think Ryan or Stephen Johns, because the concussion he came back from was supposedly devastating. I mean, he was out of it for a long while. I just think Lindblom, while he's gratefully deserving, next year when he plays again is more so when he would be rewarded for coming back for what he had to deal with and with the
because if you remember Jason Blake when he was diagnosed with leukemia, he won after he came back. He came back, I think, in November or December of that year and played the rest of the season. It was just a miracle that he was able to overcome what he did.
But I do think this is an award that needs to be redefined as well. Yes. I do. I actually would like to see the Masterton, the way it is now, go away and just make it the Comeback Player of the Year award.
I think that must be like
what it intimates. I think it's supposed to be almost a Comeback Player of the Year award, but it's kind of hazy in its description.
It's very hazy. Yeah,
it's very hazy.
Like that bug that flew by in Ant's house.
It's very
Lightyear. He's been with us for 3 weeks. I can't kill him. I swear. He's been hanging around.
He's not birthing thousands of spiders on your kitchen floor. That's a good thing.
That's true. I'll take it.
All right. So no, I mean, listen. I think this is almost an award that should be given out, like one player on every team. Like I feel like this is like every team has somebody like that they could give this. I feel like this is not like a league. Giving this out as a league award forces you to compare things. Like you're saying, is Oscar Lindblom, should he get it next year? How bad was his cancer? Bobby Ryan, he brought that on himself because he became an addict. You hear these different arguments out there, right? But then he overcomes it. And Bobby Ryan's not the first to come, to have to go through some kind of substance abuse situation, which a lot of players do. And a lot of players, it just doesn't get out there, have to do it. I mean, it happens more often than you know.
Sure.
But Bobby Ryan's he kind of chose to publicize it, in which I was, and Bobby Ryan's a friend. I know Bobby Ryan, and I really, but I still think this is, for me, this is like,
you're a friend, you tell him to eat better pizza, but whatever.
Yeah, we've had that discussion 1,000 times over about Cherry Hills Pizza, but yeah, or the diners, which Ponzio's versus Olga's. It's a tough call. So
I would take Olga's.
And, but this is a tough work because you have to compare these different kinds of things, and all three of these guys, have done great, have been admirable, for what they've done, for what they've come through, and I think it's nice that we have an award like this.
No, it is nice. I love the award. I mean, look, I'm wearing. I made bracelets for Oscar Lindblom, but I just don't know if he should win this year. Because I do think the criteria is hazy, and I do think like Ant said, you can't debate any of their stories. You really can't.
True. You really can't. They're all good stories,
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
This is an award that matters a lot more than the Lady Byng.
Okay. So do we want to get on to the Vegas Knights? I think we should try, and we have a few minutes left here. Maybe you can do 10 to 15 on the Vegas Knights. All right. So, because we're trying to go through all the teams here, what they're, and this is let's talk about Vegas, and obviously a team that still continues to amaze. I mean, it's like they have not fallen off really. I think the feeling was they were going to be a one-hit wonder, and they haven't been. I mean, last year they arguably, if that crazy thing doesn't happen with the 5-minute power play in San Jose, who knows what happens to the Vegas Knights?
But you have to admit that they were like the little engine that could when they made the Stanley Cup final in their debut season, and now this is a juggernaut. It's changed because they've added Stone. They've added
a whole line on top of that team.
Right.
And Martinez to the blue line, adding everything else to the mix. It does look like a powerful team, but there's also that, sometimes when a team loads up on additional talent, chemistry still isn't quite what it was that first year.
Right.
And I mean, I think for a lot of those players that are still there, they were, they were 3 wins short of a Stanley Cup and still want to get that. But now there's a lot of high level contracts that are on that team. And I do have my concern that 3 years in, they're doing well, but I do have my concern about them 4 or 5 years down the line, possibly in terms of depth and things of that sort, because they have made trades for big name players, and they get that feeling of being almost a top heavy squad that things could topple quickly for them if they don't win it soon.
Yeah. I mean, and one of the interesting things to kind of go along with that, I mean, is like this year goal differential for the Vegas Knights. They've always been up there pretty strong in the goals for, goals against, This year they're 22nd in the league, at a plus. No, is that right? I have the wrong way. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm doing this the wrong direction here. Well, they're ninth in the league, which is pretty good. Sorry.
They did struggle more than people expected, which led to Gallant being fired and DeBoer being brought in. So there was a little bit of a reset at that point, and then. I think, one of the concerns at the deadline, which led to them trading for Leonard, was the fact that Fleury was, we're talking about a goalie who's 35 years old, 36 years old, playing the amount of games that he had to play and playing at a level, that's superhuman for them to win because they were not playing well defensively. Now a little bit, they add Martinez. He's a good, solid two-way defenseman. Now they have Leonard who, now the benefit would have been through the end of the regular season, Leonard playing some games down the stretch. Now everybody has 4 months rest, so Fleury should be fine. But you never know. They may have the luxury of using Leonard if there's a back-to-back situation. There's not a significant drop-off from Fleury to Leonard.
Yeah. I mean, look, their defense is still their weak spot. I mean, I do like Nicholas Hag, but I don't know what he'll produce in the playoffs. Same with White Cloud. I like him, but he's inexperienced. They're going to, have to rely on Stone and other guys to play really solid defense from the forward position and get great goaltending. If they don't get great goaltending, they're not going very far, but they have the ability to get great goaltending. So they could be a real dark horse.
Really interesting.
Martinez lengthened their defense, right? You have Taylor.
He's not that good.
You have Schmidt. I mean, their bottom pair is not the best in the world, but I like their top 4 now. And also, their first 2 lines are clearly dangerous. The key is, are they going to get anything out of that third line? Is Alex Tuch going to return to form from 2 years ago, where he kind of when he left Minnesota, he took that next step? If they can get that, then it makes that third line a lot more dangerous, which is something they need if their top 2 lines are shut down in a playoff series.
But looking past the playoffs this year, which obviously we have to look at the future here. They're similar to the Islanders in the sense that they've got a lot of sort of middle of the road or higher contracts. Stone at 9.5, Pacioretty at 7, Stastny 6.5, Carlson, Smith, Marchessault, Schmidt, and Theodore all making over 5, and then Fleury making 7. There's not a lot of they had to trade David Clarkson's contract just to clear space for the deal before the season started.
Well, they're in a weird spot because they have they were a team that was born with a window open almost, in a weird way, the way teams are being, the way general managers usually work, they usually don't make these kind of moves until you have a serious window and a chance to win a Stanley Cup, and that's what they've done,
Right.
I do feel like the Vegas, in some ways, I don't want to say that the Cup run was a disservice to their long-term development, but it definitely, as you stated, shortens the window.
Oh, yeah.
Of how long, and especially with the cap being what it's going to be, that window is rapidly closing.
Yep. So, Mike, the difference I'll take with you with the Islanders, though, is you look at who they gave the contracts to, and you compare it to the Islanders, right? And I think they're a slight tier above the guys who the Islanders did in terms of a talent base.
Agreed.
And also projecting forward what those guys will do. Also, the benefit is, and the Islanders do have a lot of good prospects as well, is even despite the fact that I've dealt Brandstrom and other guys, right?
Yeah.
You still have Krebs. You still have Cody Glass in their system, which are 2 high-end guys they're going to insert in over the next couple of years, which could start on their third line and provide a lot more depth to what you've seen so far in that team.
Yeah.
The one thing I worry about with Vegas is loss of momentum here with the time off, because I think they did have some good things going. Martinez was hot at the time. Is Alec Martinez going to start off hot again? I don't know. I worry about them losing momentum here. There are some teams like Boston that I think are just impenetrable to what might happen to them in a start and stop situation, but I think Vegas is different.
Yeah, and to Anthony's point about the cup run maybe doing a bit of disservice, I mean, Bill Foley has been consistent with, he didn't want to build a team that was a traditional expansion team. Once they tasted success, he was like full throttle. Let's go get Pacioretty. Let's sign Stastny. Let's make the investment and trade prospects and draft picks to get Mark Stone. He wanted to be a contender right away, and the price that they pay is probably 3 or 4 years down the line when they're.
Yeah, and it's a unique situation, I think, in Vegas, especially selling it to an absolute brand new market when it comes to a professional sports team. And knowing the potential for the NFL to arrive in a year, not that long down the line, they wanted to make sure to have a firm base to start from. So from that perspective, that it does make sense within that market because again, everything is it's Vegas, and you can't get away from the fact that everything is presentation and show business and keeping people coming back for more. And you need those. And in many ways, it's almost kind of like the Rangers or the Flyers in the past, where they were always trying to bring in the marquee players to make sure in such a highly competitive market potentially that because there's a lot of other distractions in Vegas. It's not just they've survived before sports and they'll survive after sports based off of what.
I mean, here's an interesting about it. I think when the NHL put them in the league, I think they kind of figured Vegas would probably take a while to get going with like ticket sales and all that stuff, but they would be okay because everyone in the NHL would want to visit them. Like every fan would there would be all kinds of fan club trips when their team came there, and they thought they would be filled up with out of town fans, and that would kind of give them an extra couple thousand fans a night. I think that's where they were thinking. It's interesting how that hasn't happened that way because you do still get a lot of people visiting there, but they have gotten a local thing going, which is really, it is more than a gambling city. I mean, Vegas is a big city and it has a big suburbs and had a lot of, there's a lot of regularness to it.
And I think it did behoove the Golden Knights to get off to the right on the right foot because if you compare the competence of ownership with Bill Foley as opposed to the bowl cut in and Al Smith's son, was it Mark, I think, or I think it's Mark, Mark Smith, the owner of the Raiders.
Mark Davis,
and the way that they've incompetently been run over the last few years, it was good to get a foothold in Vegas, and I think that established their fan base. Now, whether they can take advantage of that, it all depends on who they match up with in the first round after they go through the round robin. They come up with the right matchup, they could go far.
Well, one of the interesting things about them, I think we can all agree that their goaltending has been a key, right? It's been the thing. Like Fleury has been, I've come out and said that without Fleury, this team, isn't anything where it is. And I was doing some research on this, and their save percentage, first year they were out. I thought, man, their save percentage must be around the top of the league. Fleury had an incredible year. They were just awesome. They were 11th, in the league first year with a 9.11 save percentage.
Right.
Last year they fell to 15th with a 9.05 save percentage, and this year they fell to 22nd with a 900 save percentage.
But remember that first year they had a 9.11 save percentage with guys like Dylan Ferguson and Subban and I can't remember the other.
Yeah, for that, but for a little bit there, you're right. And this year, and now obviously I think them getting Leonard was a really smart move from that perspective, and also obviously Fleury's going to play almost all the time unless he's hurt. They're not going to go to Robin Leonard unless something happens.
And the numbers this year declined, not because Fleury declined so much, but their backup goaltending with Subban and Garrett Sparks was pitiful. So they needed to get a veteran backup, and I think it's not a backup situation because Leonard is a number one. They're just renting him like LA rented Ben Bishop a few years ago.
Yeah.
But the question is, will they be able to play good enough defense in front of their goaltending to be able to advance deep in the playoffs? I think that the additions that they made were good. Martinez is a solid defenseman. Their top four, like Jan was saying, is excellent. So now, can they score enough goals, and can they get the goaltending like they got from Fleury a couple years ago? And he was the main reason why they got to the Cup final.
Well, they scored. When you talk about how many goals they scored, their goal scoring this year, was they scored 224 goals, which is the same amount which is like one more goal than the St. Louis Blues. Think about that for a second. So that they scored one more goal than the Blues, and they scored 3 less goals than the Flyers. So they're right in the middle there. So they were 9th this year, and that's been interesting because their first year they were a lot. I mean, the first year in goal scoring, I think they were really high. I was looking. Yeah, they were 5th in goal scoring their first year. Last year in goal scoring, they fell back quite a bit last year. They were 14th, so now they're back at 9, right? So they've been better this year in goal scoring, Mike, but they're still I think they have to, the way they play, the up-tempo way they play is they're going to win more high-scoring type games than not, right? That still is their game. Their game is the whole key to the net, and the other thing we talk about, the whole key to the Vegas team is that when they first came in the league, they played faster than anybody else. That was the bottom line. It wasn't that they were faster than anybody else, but they played faster than anybody else. And you really noticed this when you saw them live. Like it was it was incredible.
Yeah, I think that was the case then. I don't think that's the case now.
Not the case now, and in a lot of ways because they have
Stone slowed them down. Let's be honest about that.
Pacioretty. Yeah, these are good, and and Stastny even at this point, they're great players. They're not.
The thing is, the West has definitely become a very physical conference. We saw evidence of that. I think in some ways Vegas was kind of reacting to that by acquiring big physical forwards in order to be able to compete. Especially, and again, that lesson also comes from the finals when they played a Washington Capitals team that really just pounded the living daylights out of them physically in that Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, the closest comparison I can make is coming out of the lockout when the Sabres had a bunch of water bugs and they were all really fast. And then when they finally came up against teams that were bigger and stronger and as talented or more talented, they lost. And that's what Vegas ran out of gas because they were always the smaller, speedier team in all those series, and they up until a point that was successful because those are the players that they could get, but eventually they were worn down enough that Washington beat them. I think they had to compete with that, and that's why they added these bigger players.
It's interesting. I always look at one of the things I always look at was speed, as far as how you're trying to judge how speedy and how fast a team is. It's always interesting to look at the penalty minutes taken against them. Because a lot of times teams are either they caught, they have to hook, they have to grab somebody, they have to do that kind of thing. A lot of the tripping penalties and stuff like that. And they weren't that high this year for that. Where they were other years. This year they were 25th in the penalty minutes taken against them. Where Boston's number 1. Boston plays they're fast and quick. The Rangers play fast and quick. They were number 2. Colorado, then Tampa. You're looking at these are fast teams, right? And that's basically what it comes down to.
I think there's also been a change, certainly from going from Gallant to DeBoer.
Yeah.
People can make fun calling DeBoering all they want. At the end of the day, Pete DeBoer usually is able to get teams, especially early on in his tenure with the team, is able to get them playing pretty tightly defensively. And that's the one thing we did notice about Vegas was they've shifted away from playing go-go hockey to much more of a full-on 200-foot game. And I think this is a factor for them. Now, the one thing, again, that plays against them, Vegas very much obviously has fed off their home ice advantage every year that they've been there. They don't have that in this postseason. That being said, they might at the same time have the ability to sort of play in any situation because of the style and mentality that DeBoer instills in those players. And that's the one thing. That's the one thing where I say with Vegas, while I have some doubts about them, I do have confidence in their coach in terms of the effect that DeBoer has had, much the same way with Alain Vigneault in Philadelphia, that they've gotten them to play a certain style and it's worked, even if they're not scoring or playing at the same pace of play that we've been used to.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Honestly, I really do. They this year were not as good against their own conference as they've been in the past either, which is interesting. As you go through this whole thing, and they tended to dominate their conference the last couple of years. This year, not as much. So, and I don't know what, and like you're saying, is it because it's become more physical? And they're still not a really very physical team. When it all comes down to, they've gotten more physical, but they're still not. I wouldn't call them a physical team at all. So I'm not sure why that is, but that I think it will be interesting to see how that plays out, because when you take away the home ice and everything like that, you just end up, you're going to play teams within your conference. I think it's going to be fascinating to see that.
Do you want to touch on the subject of your blog yesterday, the free agents or the undrafted players?
Yeah, actually, we should talk about that because there was kind of, if we have a second, let's do that for 2 minutes here. I did want to talk about that because we have, to me yesterday, I went with Panarin because, the idea was who are the best undrafted players ever to play in the NHL, and Panarin is obviously on the top tip of everybody's minds right now because of what he's done, what he did this year.
He's probably the best right now.
Probably the best right now. You guys have some, I'm sure, and there are some pretty interesting, some pretty obvious, but some.
Yeah, I'll go with mine. I mean, he's in my book, Sticks and Stones. Marty St. Louis.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely.
Well, I actually wrote a blog on this earlier in the year because Larry Brooks wrote it. So here's I actually broke it down into teams. So my first team was St. Louis.
Okay.
Joey Mullen.
Yeah.
John LeClaire.
Yeah.
Brian Rafalski. And Ed Belfour.
Eddie Belfour's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Couple goalies, Eddie Balfour and Curtis Joseph.
Yeah.
Boreas Salming.
Boreas Salming's a really good one.
That's a real good
one. Now, Adam Oates.
Adam Oates is like might be my second maybe of all time. Like he is that. I agree with you on that one.
Now, since you're banning WHA, I couldn't go with Peter Stastny, but he wasn't drafted. Neither was Gretzky. But
right.
Here's a favorite one of mine. Steve Thomas, Stumpy Thomas.
But on the list of these other players, he doesn't belong.
No, but he scored over 400 goals. So,
I know, but he's not like on the list of these other players.
No,
go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So other guys who I had were Jason Blake.
Yeah.
Doug Brown.
Tim Kerr is a Hall. I think should be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
John Madden.
Players.
Chris Kunitz.
Mark Giordano.
How about John Bobrovsky? About Bobrovsky? Bob.
Yeah, Sergei Bobrovsky.
How about Torrey Krug?
He's undrafted.
Torrey Krug's a good one.
Dino Ciccarelli.
Yep.
Dino's a really good one.
Dino's a good one. He's a Hall of Famer.
I mean, there's some interesting ones when you go through, like that are currently playing right now. Some of the best are currently playing right now. I put I'm a big fan of this guy. Maybe just because I like his overall game, but it's Pierre Bellemare. I really think that he brings a lot more to the game than you think. Jason Blake was undrafted.
Blake.
He said that.
Dan Boyle.
Jason Blake. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I was listening.
Dan Boyle.
Dan Boyle. Right. Nice.
The happy Dan Boyle. Yep.
Yeah. Not the Larry Brooks Dan Boyle.
Did you guys say another one of your Leafs and Tyler Bozak?
Tyler Bozak, former Leaf.
Oh, I thought you said Tyler Biggs. I misheard that. Okay.
Yeah.
He was drafted, Russ. He was drafted.
I know.
I mean, two other guys who I thought were good. Russ, one is you'll like is Dave Poulin.
Yeah, Poulin's a good one.
Yeah. Another one is Andy Green.
Yeah, Green's a good one. Nice player.
Yeah. Steve Duchesne. How about that one?
Yeah. Duchesne was a heck of a player.
There's just going through my list. I had written a bunch of them. Some of them are, personal favorites, like Ron Flockhart, who was one of the real unforgotten, one of the unforgotten. But how about like Mark Giordano is in the NHL right now?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you
Mike said Giordano.
I was going through my list at the same time that he was talking, so I apologize.
Your list is better than Mike's. I get it.
I don't think so, but
he usually blanks out everything I say. So what the heck?
I've learned. But Chris Kunitz is a good one.
Chris Ford, I heard that. That's an echo.
I heard that one too. Sorry, I'll get out of here then.
Okay.
I think I really like. It is interesting to see some of your favorite players. One of my favorites of all time, Ilkka Sinisalo. These some of the Flyers players that just really the Flyers had a lot of quite a few good undrafted players. I like the concept of the undrafted player because like Russ, every time we sit there and do the drafting, guys aren't picked. These are the guys.
Look at Dan Girardi, right?
They're minded up. Yeah, really, definitely. And of course, you said Zuccarello, so it's a good one.
Yeah, Zuccarello's a good one.
Yeah, there's a bunch of good ones on here.
I don't think Fetisov was drafted.
No, he might have been like.
We purposely I didn't count necessarily because of Soviet Union, so that clearly changes the specter in terms of who you consider.
Yeah, because they weren't the early guys.
Well, no, some were. I mean, some weren't.
They were eventually drafted, a lot of them.
I mean, McGillney was, right?
Right, McGillney was.
And then Bury was afterwards once McGillney paved the way.
Yeah, he was drafted, Mike. Yeah.
Fetisov was drafted in the 8th round by the Devils.
That's how they were able to bring him over.
Actually, he was drafted twice. He was drafted by the Habs in '78.
one of my favorite players that again is a Flyer player, but is extremely underrated and one of the most versatile players in the league, in my opinion, is Michael Raffle, who is
a good player.
He's definitely one of those guys who can play on any line, and has shown that he can play on the top line and make noise. We're talking about the Vegas Knights. How about Thomas Nosek? It's a good one too.
Nosek, yeah, he's all right.
I like him. Torrey Krug, we got that one right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there you have it. Interesting stuff, and some really good arguments for different players. It is hard to beat St. Louis, though. I do agree with you on that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He's just done it all, and was a worthy Lady Byng candidate at one point.
Yeah, looks like Fred Brathwaite was undrafted. He's pretty good too.
Now Joey Mullen is interesting because, if you remember the Miracle movie, right? Do they get this wrong in the Miracle movie? Because did they get it wrong, Mike?
No, I didn't.
I think he was in the camp.
The line from the Miracle movie is
how much money Mullen got to go pro.
Right, to go pro. And I think waiting in Calgary, they said, or something like that, which he's got saying like $18,000 in Calgary or whatever.
No, I think that's accurate.
Is that where he signed? Because I thought that wasn't his first team, actually.
First team was St. Louis, wasn't it?
St. Louis, wasn't it?
Well, it doesn't mean that Calgary didn't have money to offer him, though.
Yeah, but why he didn't play for that team, for the 1980 Olympic team?
He'd already gone pro. You couldn't sign with a team then and you weren't eligible.
Right. But he went pro. Didn't he go pro that year, though?
He went pro beforehand.
He signed with the Blues in '79, played in Salt Lake for the entire year, and then played one playoff game for the Blues.
Yeah, and maybe the Blues outbid Calgary. That's probably
signed in '79. That would be the year, right? Because that was 79-80.
Yeah, but maybe had like 40,000 reasons not to be there.
Right, wasn't that
was the line?
But I thought there's 40,000 reasons in Calgary. I could have sworn they said Calgary.
I'll go back and take a look.
I'm not sure, but
it's pretty fun. When I was thinking about that, when I saw, because I'm like, oh, you start with Calgary, and then I remembered he did start indeed. Definitely.
There's no question he wanted to get paid. I mean, both him and his brother. I mean, everybody knows.
No one expected, no one expected.
Want to get out of Hell's Kitchen.
What would happen?
I didn't want to go there and just start the whole Hell's Kitchen.
How much better would the '80 Olympic team been with Joey Mullen? With that,
a lot better.
I know it was probably their best scorer, right? I mean,
or Ralph Cox.
He would have been the best scorer. Yeah.
Joey Mullen.
Mark Johnson was pretty good.
Mark Johnson
would have been Joey Mullen good.
My favorite player on that team was still Christian, though, Dave Christian. I think he was the best player on that Olympic team.
Christian? I mean, I like Pavelich. I liked Dave Silk even before he was a Ranger. There was a lot of guys. There was a lot of likable guys.
Christian just did it all, though. I mean,
Christian went from offense to defense.
Yeah, and he was a great two-way player. I just thought he was.
I think the best player on that team was Neil Broughton, and the best defenseman was Mike Ramsey.
Okay.
Best overall defenseman. Suter was really good too, though.
Yes.
I mean, they had. They had some defense.
Brooks put together a great team.
He really did. I mean,
they put together a team that
and
was
actually in true fashion. I'm going to have a crossover here, but in today's Jack Adams talk, Torts said he believes the Olympics should be amateurs.
Yes.
But I
we're way back when the Soviet Union was never paid.
You hear about the Torts quote? We'll end with this. This is really great. So they asked Torts, what he thought about the fact that they could hear us, they were going to mic the ice, and you'd probably, but since there was no crowd, you would probably hear players cursing back and forth. And he said he didn't give an S about that. That was his quote in the press conference.
Of course he doesn't.
Torts is back. I love it. That's like phenomenal. Anyway, that's his quote. You can find it online. You can see it somewhere out there. All right. Thanks so much, guys. Even though you were all wrong about the Lady Big thing, time will prove me right, as always. History. It
never does.
History always does, Mike. Always.
You'll let us know when there's a first, right?
No, do you want me to make a list right now? It's just crazy.
Please.
I'm not going. I'm not the kind of guy I pat myself on the back.
Bring this up with Kevin Allen. He'll be the final arbiter of everything.
Yeah, I am. We will bring it up with Kevin Allen tomorrow.
Okay.
Anybody who says that they're not going to get Mr. Lady Byng said to them when they skate on the ice is wrong. Anyway, remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you all tomorrow.